The town of Ashford, Maine, carried a silence when night fell, a silence that felt heavier than most places. People locked their doors, pulled their curtains tight, and refused to speak of the mansion that stood at the edge of the woods. The Ashwood Mansion, a sprawling estate that had once been the pride of the wealthy Ashwood family, was nothing more than a blackened ruin now, its walls scorched, its windows broken, its iron gates rusted by time and neglect. For more than a century, it had stood abandoned, and for more than a century, stories had circulated about the screams that came from within, the shadows seen moving across its windows, and the acrid smell of smoke and blood that sometimes drifted into the town even on still nights. Most people avoided the place. Outsiders, though, always found their way there, drawn by curiosity, drawn by the thrill of trespassing where no sane local would tread. 4 friends from Boston would become the latest to wander into its maw. Ethan was the leader, bold, cocky, the kind who laughed in the face of danger. Claire was more cautious, always quick to spot trouble, but easily dragged along by the others. Mark the Joker never took anything seriously and masked his nerves behind sarcasm. Julia, the quiet one, carried a sensitivity that often unsettled the others. She sometimes claimed she could feel places, could hear voices no one else heard, and when the 4 stood before the mansion under the October moon, her pale face and trembling lips unsettled them more than the sight of the ruin itself. Ethan grinned at the gates, shoving them open with a screech that echoed through the empty woods. "It's just a house," he said. "A burned-out old house with a creepy story. Let's prove everyone wrong." Claire pulled her jacket tighter around her, her unease clear. "People say no one who goes in comes out," she said softly. Mark laughed, rolling his eyes. "Yeah, and people say Elvis still lives in Nevada." "It's a story, Claire." "Nothing more," Julia whispered, barely audible. "It's waiting for us." But no one listened. The path to the door was overgrown, weeds and moss choking the gravel. The front doors loomed before them, massive oak slabs blackened by fire, their iron handles rusted and pitted. Ethan pushed, and the doors groaned open with a sound that echoed like a dying animal. A blast of cold air rolled out, heavy with the smell of ash, mildew, and something faintly rotten. Inside, the foyer stretched upward into darkness, a grand staircase curving along the wall, its banister coated in thick dust. A chandelier dangled precariously from the ceiling, its crystal shards smeared not just with cobwebs, but with something darker, something that looked disturbingly like dried blood. Their footsteps echoed too loudly, each sound magnified as though the house itself was amplifying their presence. Then came the sound that froze them all, a single piano note, long and distorted, reverberating from somewhere deep within the house. No one was near a piano. They moved deeper, their flashlights cutting through cobwebs and layers of dust. The walls were lined with portraits of the Ashwood family, pale and gaunt faces staring down with unsettling intensity. The paint had darkened with time, but the eyes in the portraits seemed too bright, too sharp, almost alive. Mark forced a laugh, stepping closer to one. "Creepy, but come on. Paintings don't hurt you." As he leaned in, black-red liquid seeped from the painted eyes, dripping down the canvas to the floor. Mark recoiled, swearing, and the others gasped. The portrait's mouth twitched into the faintest of smiles, and something behind the canvas shifted as though something alive was pressing against it. Julia whispered, "They're watching us," in the ballroom. The cracked mirror that spanned the far wall reflected their pale faces. Mark, trying to cut the tension, bowed before it with a flourish. "Welcome to the Ashwood Ball," he announced. His reflection did not mimic him. Instead, it stood upright, grinning far wider than humanly possible. Before he could move, his reflection's hands shot forward, bursting through the glass like it was water. They seized his shoulders with impossible strength and yanked him forward. He screamed as his body slammed against the mirror, shards slicing deep into his arms and chest. Blood sprayed across the marble floor as he struggled, kicking, his eyes wide with terror. The reflection pulled harder, dragging him halfway into the glass. His stomach split open on the shards, intestines spilling out in steaming coils, slapping weightly against the floor. His scream turned into a choking gurgle as blood filled his mouth. Then the mirror released him, dropping him back onto the ballroom floor. He convulsed once, then lay still, his body a torn, bloody ruin. The reflection was gone. Claire vomited, clutching Ethan's arm, sobbing uncontrollably. Julia shook, whispering over and over, "He was the first. He was the first." Ethan, pale and shaken, pulled them both away, but the mansion seemed to shift around them. The doors they had entered through were gone, replaced by another endless hallway. The air thickened, colder with each step, their breath fogging as they moved. The mansion groaned, floorboards creaking beneath them like bones breaking. They stumbled upon a nursery. A crib stood in the center of the room, blackened by fire, a mobile above it spinning slowly though the air was still. The walls were blistered, peeling, and stuffed animals sat in corners, their faces melted, their stuffing spilling like innards. Then came the cry. A baby's wail, high-pitched and piercing, filled the room. Claire, against every instinct, rushed forward. The blanket in the crib writhed, something shifting beneath it. She tore it back and screamed. Inside lay a charred bundle of bones, maggots crawling over the blackened remains. The baby's jaw unhinged wide, impossibly wide, shrieking as flames burst from its chest. Fire spread instantly, crawling up Claire's arms. Her skin blistered, splitting in wet sheets that peeled off, muscle and fat exposed beneath. She clawed at her burning flesh, chunks of skin ripping free and slapping against the floor. Ethan dragged her away, but her arms were nothing but charred, dripping meat. The door slammed shut behind them, trapping the smell of roasted flesh inside. They carried her into the library, her sobs weak, her breath ragged. Bookshelves loomed tall, rotting volumes spilling from them. One book fell open by itself, its pages flipping violently until it stopped on an illustration of 4 figures burning alive, their faces twisted in agony. The fireplace roared to life with blue flame, freezing cold instead of warm. Frost formed on their skin. Claire screamed as her already burned arms cracked open, blood spurting as frozen shards of bone pierced through her skin. She convulsed violently, her ribs snapping outward with a sickening crack. Her chest burst open, her heart crystallized in ice before shattering into shards that scattered across the floor. She collapsed, lifeless, blood pooling beneath her. Ethan and Julia screamed, her gore splattering across their faces. Only 2 remained, and panic set in. They fled through the twisting halls, the walls closing in, until they found the stairway spiraling down into the basement. They descended into darkness, the air heavy with the copper stink of blood. Chains dangled from the ceiling, some ending in hooks that still dripped red. Rats gnawed at piles of meat that looked too fresh to be centuries old. In the center of the basement floor was a ritual circle, symbols carved deep into the stone, filled with dried blood that pulsed as though alive. Ethan lifted a rusted pipe, his hands shaking. "We end this here," he shouted. He swung at the symbols, but the ground split open. Skeletal, charred hands burst from the cracks, seizing his legs. They tore into him with inhuman strength, ripping muscle from bone. Blood sprayed in thick arcs. He swung wildly, screaming, but more hands clawed their way up, dragging him into the circle. His ribs cracked one by one, jutting through his skin. His stomach split wide, steaming entrails spilling across the stone. He screamed until his voice broke, blood pouring from his mouth as his chest burst open. His heart tore free, burning as it fell to the floor. Before the hands yanked him completely under, leaving only a slick smear of gore dot, Julia pressed herself against the wall, her flashlight flickering. Shadows swarmed, whispering her name in dozens of overlapping voices. The portraits from upstairs appeared on the walls, faces melted, eyes gouged out, mouths sewn shut. The shadows seized her, stretching her body unnaturally. Her jaw cracked open, splitting her face. Blood poured from her eyes, her ears, her nose, until her screams turned to wet gurgles. Invisible knives peeled her skin from her arms in strips, exposing raw muscle. She convulsed, her body twitching violently, before collapsing into the circle. The shadows swallowed her, her body tearing apart, blood soaking into the stone as the mansion fed again. By morning, Ashwood Mansion stood silent as it always had. The iron gates hung open, swaying gently in the breeze. To passing locals, it looked like nothing had changed. But that night, when the wind was still, new sounds echoed from within. Not just whispers, not just footsteps, but 4 distinct voices shrieking, begging, choking on their own blood. The Ashwood Mansion had claimed more flesh. It had gorged itself on the living, and it was still hungry.
Please like and subscribe channel Fear Frequency for more horror stories. Thank you.